active duty service members, veterans, family members, thank you for your service. And thank you for listening to Return to Roots Mil2Vet Resource Podcast, where we document our shared experiences, stories, and transitioning and reintegrating from the military to the community. Hosted by two transitioning service members, myself, Chris Elder, and my partner in crime, Jonathan Hernandez. For more information, go to mil2vet.com. If you have little ears, ensure you listen to the content before you allow them to listen. And if you are in crisis and homelessness, suicide ideations, or incarceration, dial 211 Courage to Call for assistance. Now, stand by for the sound of freedom.
Return to Roots. Welcome to the show. Today, we are going to be interviewing an author, a book author, a phenomenal business leader that is wanting to make and help succeed not only veterans, but the community. Without further ado, here is Jan Rutherford.
Yogi, thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's an absolute honor to be able to share this time with you and learn about what it is that your organization and that your leadership podcast does. Can you start off by telling us who you are?
Yeah, my name's Jan Rutherford. I'm the founder of Self-Reliant Leadership. And my background is I was a 17-year-old kid who went in the Army and thought he could become a Green Beret because somebody told me I could. And I only weighed 114 pounds, but somehow I made it through. Best thing I ever did, changed my life. And, fast forward, I spent 25 years, working for other people. And for about the past 10 to 12 years, I've been working for myself in a leadership development firm that we do a few things. We do executive coaching. We lead expeditions with military veterans and executives out in the wilderness. We've got a podcast. We do keynote speeches. We have online video courses. And it's all about what I learned in the military about great leadership, creates great teams. And unfortunately, all of us have been with really poor leaders and been on really poor teams. So I've sort of made it my mission in life to try to figure out what makes a leader. And I won't figure that out until the day I die, I'm sure. But I keep studying leaders, bad leaders, good leaders, and I keep trying to help leaders be more effective team players and more effective, creating high performing teams. So anyway, long answer to your short question, Yogi.
It's pretty awesome stuff. We were recording with Jim, and he was like, "Oh man, you should talk to Jan about his crucibles that he does."
Yeah.
So like that's like the first thing I want to get into. Like, what led to starting these crucibles that you host?
Well, I like it was yesterday. I remember being trained how to lead patrols by a bunch of Vietnam veterans. And I remember being a 18-year-old kid, and most of the people that were in my group were, older than me, or they were junior NCOs, and I was tasked with leading them on a patrol. And I remember getting good feedback, and it just, built my confidence like you wouldn't believe. And fast forward, I was in the business world in meetings and hotel, meeting rooms, and I'm like, this isn't the place to learn about leadership. I mean, you learn about leadership when you're cold, wet, tired, and hungry, when people are out of their comfort zone. And I thought, boy, if I ever get the opportunity to combine my two passions, developing leaders and being in the wilderness, I would do it. So in 2014, we did our first one with a very small group, and it was not ideal. I wouldn't say it was a disaster, but it was pretty bad. It was out in Moab. It did not go as planned. And I had a partner, and he said, "I'm out." He goes, "Hey, if you want to keep doing this, you do it." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to keep doing it." And then I did my after action review. I figured out what we did right, what we did wrong, what we need to improve. Did the next one. It was awesome. We really help people. And now we just finished our 23rd expedition. And we've been from Patagonia to Alaska, Moab, the Wallowa Mountains of Oregon, the Rocky Mountains. We've been all over the place. And we've helped probably about 250 people total. About half of those are executives and half were military veterans. And probably 50 to 75% of the military veterans that have participated have been from the special operations community, men and women, and people that have had 12, 18 combat deployments. And I'm really proud that we've been able to help them, because what happens, the executives realize, boy, there's some really smart people that are going to transition out that I need to have on my team. And we help the veterans understand the one thing they didn't learn in the military, and that is a business is all about generating revenue. And you know how to spend money when you're in the military. You have budgets and you know how to spend it. But there's very few people in the military that actually go out and get somebody to sign a check. And that's the difference. And no matter what you do in the business world, you have to remember that there is a customer that is going to pay for something they perceive to have more value than it costs. And that's the business world. And I think it's really cool and really powerful. And if it's a good company with good leaders and they have a noble purpose, they can do good in the world. And so, I get all these men and women together and it's just magic, what happens out there. And, I just love to do that. And somebody on the trip will always say, so this is your office, huh? And I'm like, well, for a few days, yes. And so that's pretty cool.
So to kind of summarize a little bit about what the crucible is you take military members and executives, you throw them out in the wilderness basically to survive and learn from each other and thrive, and then build that network and just that unique bond that you cannot build either from one. As a military member, you understand that, right? Because that's part of your life. Yeah. But as an executive, you cannot. And no matter how many movies you watch, whatever, you have this different idea, different image than when you actually live it.
Yeah. Yogi, that's it exactly. And we don't teach survival skills or anything. We have different people lead on different days so people can observe different communication styles, decision-making processes, and how people handle adversity. We're not trying to make somebody a leader in the wilderness or teach land navigation or anything. We're just out there. It's the vehicle. And what also happens, executives get to a point where they again, it's a 400-meter race that you run 24 hours a day. That's the business world for an executive. So this is an opportunity for them to not have a phone, to do a digital detox, and take a step back and go, as I say, sit on the hill and see, what should I be doing? I'm busy, but what should I be doing? And it helps the veterans understand, hey, here's what it takes. There's a lot of sacrifice. And, in the military, oftentimes you'll have cycles, as you both know. You'll be busy and then you'll have a real slow period. You'll be busy in a slow period. In the business world, there is no slow period. You're just busy. And it's always, what can you do for, what have you done for me lately? You hit your numbers for the week, the month, the quarter, and then the numbers go up. And it's kind of like an expedition. If I were to say to the team, hey, see those mountains, we're going to go the highest peak. And we get up there and we go, okay, you made it to the summit. Yay. Oh, look, this isn't the highest peak. That one is. What do you have to do? You got to go down. Oh, that sucks. Then you got to go back up again. And it's a great metaphor for the business world. As soon as you hit a goal, there's another bigger goal and a bigger goal and a bigger goal. And it's really helpful for these men and women to understand each other's perspectives. And we do always place an executive with a veteran, and we make them accountability partners, like a battle buddy. And they start talking and getting to know each other way before we go on the crucible. And oftentimes they become really good friends. and they really make really great connections. And the other thing that happens out there, not all the time, but sometimes the veterans will tell some war stories, things they've been through, and it really helps executives understand the sacrifices that were made and the really tough decisions that we Americans ask our young people to make that serve our country, and decisions that they might have made when they were 25 that they have to live with for the rest of their life. That doesn't happen in the business world.
No, I like it. This the teams, when you form them up, do you have like executives and they'll be like, hey, I got a group of people that, like, let's say a law office was like, hey, I want to take a group of my partners and some of my team members and go on this expedition. How do they go about becoming part of that?
Well, we've got most of the ones we've run, what I'll call them, for lack of a better word, is public. So I'll recruit executives from different companies to go out, and then I'll recruit the military members and pair them up. And so it's basically a bunch of strangers. There have been a spattering of crucibles where it's an intact team that all come out, that the president, the CEO said, I want my whole team to go. That's rare, because you're asking people to do something really hard physically, and not everybody can do it. And so most organizations aren't going to do something that they can't include everybody. But I have done that, and it presents different challenges. I mean, when it's strangers, no one has anything to prove, protect, or promote, and they will talk about everything. When a group that has history go out, they might literally love each other and care, and like a special operations team, but they're cognizant that they're not going to share everything. They're not going to open up. There's still a power dynamic and all that, but it does help them bond. But it's hard for them to, if I've got a topic I want them to focus on, it's hard for them to not go into the weeds and go and bring up examples and start talking about, it's hard for them to stay up at a high level, big picture strategy, philosophical leadership, because they get into the day-to-day stuff. So good question, Chris.
Yeah, I love that somebody actually decided to take their team out there, because they could really spin off and go really crazy, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And, the strangers thing is pretty cool. So let's say I have veteran buddies that want to go help out with the crucible. How do you find your veteran population?
Yeah, and the veterans don't help with the crucible. The veterans are participants. I've had a lot of veterans that say, hey, I want to, they're good NCOs or whatever, and they're like, I want to come train. Like, this isn't about the wilderness. This is about you learning about the business world, you learning about executives. This is about you being a student. This isn't about you coming out and helping me. And we always have professional guides that accompany us, because there's always a rope involved. And if there's a rope involved, there's more insurance and there's permits. And I have world-class guides that I've been able to work with. I mean, really world-class. But the way I go about finding the veterans is really been word of mouth. That's really how I've found people. And over the years, I've gotten a little bit pickier, about who goes out there. I've always had 3 criteria: that they have to be selfless, they have to be adventurous, willing to take risks, and third, they have to have heroic aspirations beyond power and money to make a difference in other people. But I've added another one, especially for the veterans, and that is they need to be curious. They can't go into NCO trainer mode and just think everybody wants to be a commando and they're out there to teach people. They have to be curious about this new world they're entering. It's not all about their war stories. And that's what I'm looking for, is people that are really curious. And I'll tell you, I had a guy on the one last month in July. He's from a special mission unit, Sergeant Major, Stanford MBA, great person. And he took copious notes, asked a million questions. And I'm like, that's the right guy. That's the right guy on these trips. So Yeah. And we don't have, the hard part about this is it doesn't scale. I can't, it's not something that, we could put 1,000 people through. It's really hard. So, and again, I'm not telling you this because I'm trying to promote, but one of the things we just did was submitted a book to a publisher where we took the 12 things that happen on every crucible, and those 12 things became a chapter, and we told a story and how that relates to the business world. And we're hoping that that book will serve as a foundation to help people that can't go on a crucible understand what happens, and maybe get curious and ask people and create their own crucibles, if you will. I mean, there's no reason that veterans can't, before they get out, interview 20 executives and just ask a whole bunch of people a whole bunch of questions and realize that is 10 times more valuable than putting their resume together and telling everybody about all the stuff they did. And here's what I want. And I want to make $300,000 a year. And I want to get off at 3 to coach my kids in soccer. I want 5 weeks of vacation. It doesn't work that way. Sorry, but it doesn't. So get curious about what all these problems these leaders have, because they're hiring you to make their job easier. That's the only reason they're hiring you. They're not hiring you because they want to make your life better. They want to make their life better and offload work to you. And if you do a good job, then you get promoted to where they're at. And then you get to go hire people to make your job easier. But that's not going to happen right when you get out.
So what triggered this mindset to be able to get to the point that you got to make the crucible? What in your life happened between the time that you separated to where you're at?
Yeah, Yogi, great question. I'll tell you, I did my 9 years. I was 17 to 26 when I did my 9 years. So I got out before my 27th birthday. And I'm just to let everyone know, it's easy if you're transitioning and you're 26 years old, it's way easier than if you're 46 years old. It's a whole different thing, because as a 26-year-old, I could accept an entry-level position, which I did. If you're 46, you're not going to accept an entry-level position. But what I did is I paid my dues. For 25 years, I worked my way up through corporations and got to the VP level. And at the very end, I was a CEO of a small company. But the last 10 years, in hindsight, I realized I was an entrepreneur working for other people. I mean, that's what I was. I got to this point when I wanted to create great companies, and a lot of people I worked for and with just wanted to make money. And, again, I'm a capitalist. I'm all for making money, but I think I would rather work with companies that, the goal is to create a great company that serves customers, treats employees right, and then the money will come, versus the other way. And, I always knew, when I got my beret, my Green Beret, when I was just turned 19 years old, I knew that what I'm doing today is what I wanted to do. And I didn't have any entrepreneurial mentors or family members or anything. So I didn't think I could do it until the kids were grown. Like I didn't feel like I could take that risk until, the kids were grown, and then, okay, I can take that risk. If we make no money, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have started earlier. Not too much earlier, because to do what I'm doing, I think I had to learn a lot. I had to make lots of mistakes. I had to have all these experiences to hopefully, quote unquote, be wise enough to be somebody's executive coach. But boy, oh boy, I wish I'd started, a little bit sooner, because, I've had jobs, I've had a career, and now I have a calling. And so I, in the big scheme of things, I don't work. This is my life. My life is intertwined. My time, I get to do all the fun stuff. And I get to coach people while I'm hiking in my neighborhood. Literally, I'll go for a 3-mile hike in an hour, and that was a coaching session with somebody. How lucky is that? But I have to remind myself that, a good 30 plus years went into being able to have that, that 1 hour moment. It wasn't like, I left the army and then all this magic instantly happened. You got to really work hard. You got to make lots of mistakes. You got to learn from them. You got to have mentors and good people around you rooting for you. And again, you will make lots of mistakes, and you will have jobs that you don't love, and it's part of paying the dues, just like you did in the military. You didn't start out as the boss in basic training, or officer basic or R day or whatever. So anyway.
So with your organization, what are some of the really like key lessons that you've learned while doing this in the last few years that you've been getting this crucible? Last 23 years, you said, with the crucible, is that right?
No. I've done 23 crucibles for about 10 years.
10 years. So the last 10 years, the 23 crucibles, what are some of the most valuable lessons that you feel that is being pulled from these?
Well, when I run a crucible, what I've learned is it's about me designing, it's about designing it. I pick the right people, I create the right activities, I set the right expectation. I'm a designer. The less I do out there, the better the crucible. There's some people that are, like out in the woods and one-on-one with people, they are awesome. And, they're just natural coaches and people will follow them to the ends of the earth. I think I'm okay at that. I think I'm a really good designer. And I think oftentimes that's underestimated, is a leader has to figure out, how do you create an environment where you get all the right behaviors? I mean, again, the less I do on the crucible, the more magic happens. The more I try to control things or insert myself. And so what I'm constantly learning is, I and the leaders I work with, we've got to get better at asking questions. That's the main thing. We all know how to lead by being directional and authoritative, but that doesn't create the commitment we want. The commitment comes from people feeling that they have autonomy, they're learning, they have purpose. I mean, that's where motivation comes from. And, sometimes, this will sound trite, but I think sometimes as a leader, less is more.
Fully agree. And especially because there's a very fine line between being engaged and becoming a micromanager, and then also between being not caring for what your people do or how to lead them.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic how you place that. So now let's talk about your podcast. What is your podcast about?
So our podcast is called The Leadership Podcast, and our tagline is "We Study Leaders," and that's what we do. We've had it 7 years, almost 400 guests, and some of the names the people on this listening might know. We've had Martin Dempsey on, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs. We've had Mike Rogers, former head of the NSA. We've had Admiral Mullen, former chairman of Joint Chiefs. We've had Stan McChrystal on, Team of Teams author, former commander in Afghanistan. We've had some really, just a plethora of every service. Oh, there you go. I'm looking at a Mike Mullen coin. He's brilliant. Yeah,
I got this one in Afghanistan.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. He I love interviewing the admirals because they're such independent thinkers. We've really enjoyed interviewing the admirals that we've had on, but we've had this for a long time. Jim Vasilopoulos and I think we try to ask really good questions and engage people in a good discussion. And we're trying to figure out, what makes a leader. And, and it's kind of cool, and you guys might experience this, but sometimes I feel like, every week we talk to a new guest, it's like an MBA refresher. And and sometimes, we're just amazed and in awe of the people on. Sometimes there'll be somebody on that's kind of well known, and it's like, I don't understand why they're so well known. But there's something to learn from everybody. And the really interesting people are the ones that are super curious. They're really well read. They've paid their dues, and the ones I really like are the ones that are really self-made. They might have started out at kind of at the bottom, and they worked really hard, and it kind of goes to my whole angle of self-reliance. That there's and one of your questions you ask often is, what do companies do to support you? And I think first is you have to take personal responsibility. You have to be self-reliant. That's what and then organizations, the organizations to support veterans shouldn't do anything different than they're doing to be great organizations. That they should treat everybody, because veterans are different. They served, they did all this, but there's a whole bunch of people in the company that have all these special backgrounds and attributes. And, there's people that have come from nothing and worked their butts off in all kinds of, hard jobs. And, you have no idea what, civilians that didn't serve overcame to get where they're at. So, I think there's two things. And, again, the way that a veteran can best, foster an environment that's going to be good for them is to be really curious, about the problems and challenges that they've been hired to solve and what that company is really all about. And again, to, look through all the shininess and the website and all that and the money, and really find, as people would say, good dudes and good dudettes. Especially if you're older than 26, you're too old to put up with being around jerks. You want to be around good people that share your values. And that is the most important thing. It's not the industry or that company or the shiny company car. It's being around good people that have a noble purpose.
And he goes with one of my favorite phrases. It says, do not, it's from JF Kennedy. Do you want, oh man, I just forgot it. Don't worry about what your country is doing for you. Do unto your country. Oh, how does that go?
What your country can do for you. It's not what your country can do for you. It's what you can do for your country. Yeah, that's a great.
Absolutely.
Well, and JFK is, he's, at mythic status with the Green Berets, because he's the one that authorized special forces to wear the Green Beret. And the Green Berets were the ones that carried his casket. So yeah, he's a big deal in the Green Beret community. So, yep.
It's funny because the reason why, one of the things I love about our community, right? When you're like, man, I get phone calls all the time from veterans. Hey, how can I help train? We're always like, hey, how can I help? We're always really kind of self-motivated, and a lot of us are incredibly selfless, sometimes to a default.
Yeah.
And that's where I could really see how your organization really kind of helps people realize, yo, this is your time to learn. And that's one of the things that we really talk about here on the Mil2Vet within our community, is that you have to be curious, and you have to realize that no one else is going to care about your transition more than yourself. And a lot of us don't even think about it until it's too late. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. Everybody out there in the business world is in transition. I don't care if they served or they didn't serve. They are all in transition. Everybody is here and they want to be there. And a lot of them don't know how to bridge that gap, and they're struggling. whether it's somebody that's 70 years old and wants to retire, and how do I transition out of my company and find meaning in my life, or a manager I talked to today at Amazon who wants to be a senior manager. And then eventually I want to be an entrepreneur. I mean, everybody's trying to figure that out. So as a veteran, you are special, you're unique, you sacrificed, but you're not unique in that you're the only one going through a transition. And here's the other thing. Everybody has got crap going on at home. Everybody's got family stuff, personal stuff. Everybody's got that. So, when you come into a company and say, I need to work remote and I need to, and you've got all these requirements, it's like, if somebody's going to have to take up the slack, if you're asking for all this stuff, because everybody's got stuff, everybody. And as you know, as leaders, what we do is, and again, we got stuff, but we're also willing to raise our hand and say, I will sacrifice even more to help people, to take care of people, to serve. And even though you might not be serving your country by going into a business, you're still serving other human beings. I mean, no matter what the company does, the company is trying to make other people's lives better in some way, shape, or form. And it's up to you to find purpose and meaning in that, and to know that you are serving. You're being a good fellow employee. You're being a good leader. You're being a good follower. You're being a good partner to clients. Today's trash day in our neighborhood, and I saw the recycle guy come through and the trash collector come through, and it might be me getting older, but I just think there's beauty in what they do. I mean, think about if we didn't have those guys, and they're always friendly, they always wave, and at the end of the day, they get to go, I went through this, I collected, there's some fulfillment in that, and they know they're helping. I mean, what would we do without, every job has, nobility in it. And no matter what we do, even while we're paying our dues, we've got to figure out and find that nobility and purpose and meaning in what we're doing.
Yeah, my father, one of the things that he used to tell me, and that always made me feel happy about anything that I did, he would say, and this was in Spanish, we were in Mexico City when he said this. He's like, son, I don't care what title you have. I don't care how much money you have. How I will measure success for you is that you do the best of your abilities with whatever position you have. Even if you're a street sweeper, but you're happy and you're making it and you are the best street sweeper out there, that will make me happy. So that changed from childhood. That changed a big mindset on, I don't care about money. I mean, we need it all to be able to be successful and survive and, have the goods that we need. But it's not what drives me. Just like you said earlier, the money will come. The positions, the titles, they will come. Whether you have a good leader today or you have a horrible leader, it doesn't matter whether you get recognized for it or not, as long as you're self-recognizing that you're doing the best for yourself, and then everything else will come. So those, it's priceless what you're doing, it's priceless what you're teaching, and thank you.
Yeah. Your dad sounds like a wise man. Yeah.
So yeah, what's one thing that you think that your services could really help out with the veteran community? What do you think would really help them out with those who are transitioning? Because you got a lot of resources on there.
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot of videos and things, and there's, there's we have almost one video for every crucible we've done, but there's that out there. There's testimonials, there's the things that people have written about what they've learned. I think, that's the main thing. And it's always surprising to veterans that A lot of civilians haven't heard of an after action review. They haven't heard that, about commander's intent, the why and the what, not the how. So there's a lot of things that, we veterans can teach, but at the same time, there's a lot that we can learn from them. I don't know that I haven't written a book to help with, veteran transition. There's a lot of them out there. I think the book that we wrote that'll be published is really to help leaders, not just veterans. The foreword is by Stan McChrystal, and the foreword is really excellent, about what it takes. But again, when we interviewed Simon Sinek, I remember he said, it's a journey, it's a journey, it's a journey. You will never get there. You have to remember that. And, there is no there. It is, I mean, he's right. It's a journey. And, you will figure out stuff as you go. And trust me, you will make lots of mistakes. The worst thing I did when I became CEO, I thought, I think I got everything figured out. And as soon as I did, man, there's about 20 things that bit me in the butt, so yeah. I was thinking about that mountain biking the other day. I was feeling good. And I'm like, oh, that's bad. That's a bad feeling when you're on the mountain bike and you start getting this little confidence, like, things are really, I feel the flow. And I'm like, oh, nope. You don't feel the flow. You don't feel it. Because that's every time I've felt that, I've gotten hurt.
So before we go into the save rounds and alibis, do you have anything else you want to put out?
I think I've said a lot. I'm kind of preaching a little bit, and I don't mean to the folks out there, but
don't even worry about it, man. This is your show, man.
Yeah. No, again, I appreciate your service. I talk to a lot of veterans, and it's just amazing. When you get a little bit older, you're like, old people in the military are like 42. Old people in the business world aren't 42. You're kind of in the prime of your life when you're 42. And, it's just interesting. I mean, you've had lots of responsibilities. You've done a lot at a very young age. And, that's the hard part is, you got to backpedal a little bit. You're not going to have those same levels of responsibilities right away because you don't know the industry. There's lots of stuff you don't know. And, but it is knowable and you've got to figure it out. And again, don't spend all this time figuring out the perfect LinkedIn profile and a resume and all that crap. Figure out some really good questions to ask people and get on the phone, even though you're scared, and call people and ask if you can interview them and ask them questions about their problems, challenges, issues, opportunities, and see what you come up with. Maybe you'll have a hypothesis about what ails the average business leader out there. I can tell you this, this is something to keep in mind is, very few business leaders get fired for not producing results or not reading a financial statement. People get fired for good old fashioned reasons. They don't get along with other people, especially their peers, their boss, support staff. They're really good with their team, but they forget that everybody is a constituent. Or they try to be right all the time. They don't know which hill to die on. So they're dying on every hill. And, I have worked with a lot of veterans who have been fired, who never had a career setback like they did in the business world when you get fired. And it's because they, ego and pride got in the way because they needed to be right. And it's like, you can be right, but you're right at the wrong time and to the wrong person in the wrong place and with the wrong message. And so, check your assumptions because you know what? Maybe you're not as right as you think you are.
Yeah, I love it, man. Being right, sometimes you waste your energy.
Well, if you're married, you know that's not good. So,
So let's slide into this saved rounds
all
and analyze. So first one, what books, podcasts, or any kind of content do you recommend people to digest while they're transitioning?
yeah. So the book, must-read book, is from 1936, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you read nothing else, read that. Second book, read anything by Bob Cialdini. He wrote the Book of Influence, and it's like the answer key to how to influence people. The third book would be my book, The Littlest Green Beret, on self-reliant leadership. There's some fun stories in there, and I do talk about my transition a little bit. Podcasts, I honestly don't listen to very many because I don't have time and I'm not in the car that much, just driving. But my podcast, the Leadership Podcast, I think is a pretty good one. We interview a lot of military people, and we know a lot of military people listen. And so we often speak directly to that segment of the population that's listening. So those are some, but and again, if anybody ever wants to ping me on my website and ask me for more, I got gobs and gobs, especially if you're over 45 and you're, what you call it, you're on your second mountain. I got a whole bunch of different kinds of books for the old guys and old gals to contemplate.
Yeah, you made it up that peak, and then you look out and you're like, oh no, I got to go back down and go back.
I know. That's right. Yeah.
So next questions that I have for you is they're very similar, but they're in different parts of your life. I would like for your guidance if you were to go back to whenever before you joined the military. What advice would you give that young, soon to be Green Beret?
Yeah.
And then before you started your transition, what advice and how early would you give that advice before getting out of the military?
Well, I was in high school when I joined. I joined in January of my senior year, and then I went in 2 weeks after graduation, 17 years old, 114 pounds. And luckily I had a great mentor that was World War II, Vietnam, Korea veteran, who was also a Green Beret. And he told me something at the time he gave me two pieces of advice. He said, when it's hard, take it day by day. When it's really bad, hour by hour. When it's horrible, moment by moment. That really helped, when I was cold, wet, tired, hungry. So that's good advice. But the best advice he gave my 17-year-old self that did not make any sense at the time. He said, Jan, you have to work with everyone. Get along with everyone. Not everyone has to be your friend. Pick your friends very carefully. That made no sense. And if there was a mistake I made was as a junior enlisted guy, I mean, there were some really great people as around, and there were some really bad people, that didn't have a moral compass. And I wasn't as quick as I should have been, to basically separate the people that had a moral compass from the people that didn't. Because sometimes the people that didn't have a moral compass were very charismatic and fun. And, they were the ones that could get you in trouble. And luckily, I mean, by the grace of God, I didn't get in too much trouble. But that would be it. And transitioning out, I think I did a pretty good job transitioning out. I worked for a year. I read everything. I had mentors, and every piece of homework they gave me, I did it. And I knew I had to because I had a wife and a baby, and I was getting out on a Friday, and we had no money, and I had to have a job on that Monday, and I did. And I had a good job at a good company, and I worked my butt off to get that. But and I wish I had kept it. This is the old days. I had a paper stack of rejection letters from companies, that was 1.5 inches thick. And what's really funny is a year or two after I was, doing well in my job, a lot of those companies that rejected me came after me. They didn't want to take a chance on me as a veteran, but once I had a little bit of a track record, then they wanted me. But I wish I had kept that as sort of a badge of honor. And, I remember that really got me down, all that rejection, that was really tough. But, and that's the other thing is, if you get a foundation, if you're lucky enough, quote unquote, to get a foundation in sales, you'll develop, rhino skin. And, and that's been really helpful, because if you're going to be a business leader, you are going to be chief salesperson. You will be. And, you are not, and everything doesn't go your way. Not everybody wants what you have to offer. And, again, you've got to really approach it with rhino skin. You're out there trying to help, and it's going to resonate with some people and some people not.
So I'm just kind of like self-reflecting on one thing. I just want to point something out to everyone that's listening. And Jen has said it over and over and over and over and over and over again. You're gonna fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
You pointed it out over and over and over and over again. I just sat here. I'm like, you're going to fail. Your first time's going to suck. Your first crucible sucked so bad that someone wanted to quit or did quit.
Yeah. The partner. Yeah.
Yeah. But you didn't let that keep you down. You just got back up and you started over and over again. You got rejection letters over and over and over and over again, but yet you still ended up with the job. That's perseverance.
Well, and I look at all the things all the times I tried to get my own business going with different people. I mean, there's so many fits and starts. Jim and I have had ideas on things that didn't go, some online courses, some urban crucibles. We've had lots of stuff. And, my wife gave me the best advice when I started my business. She said, the market will tell you what it values. Because I do a bunch of stuff. And, when I look at where my revenue comes from, or where I spend my time and my activities, like a pie chart, I thought the slice that's really tiny right now, I thought that would be the big slice. It's not. The market told me what it valued. So you have to pay attention. And I don't care if you're going to work at a company, that those companies, if you listen to the questions they ask, how they respond, they're going to tell you what they value in you, in your potential. And, you've got to pay attention to it, and you've got to adjust. And, I tell especially the guys that were, and now women that were Green Berets, that it's like a unconventional warfare mission. 12 guys, 12 people supposed to go into village and create a fighting force of 1,200. They're force multipliers. They've got to have an engineer and a medic and a commo guy and this and that. And their job is, you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, you better figure that out. And then you're going to win their hearts and minds, and you got to be a diplomat. And then you're going to teach them to fight and free the oppressed. You know what? Same thing. You're going out into, a village that they speak a different language. They have different cultural norms. You got to go figure out how to help them, and the Green Berets are super adaptive. That's what they do. That's what you've got to do. You can't go in rigid and go, well, here's what I do. Here's how my MOS translates to the civilian stuff. I mean, that's just dumb. I think that's just dumb. Sorry.
No, you're good, man. You're good. One of the questions that we like to ask people is mindset. And you could put this towards anybody that's in a transitioning situation. And like you pointed out early episode, it's not just military that transition. How do you manage your mindset through a transition?
Well, I've always been an endurance guy, and I think it's the same. I think I've experienced runner's high maybe twice. I don't know. I that's not something I've experienced. I've experienced a lot of pain, and I know how to suffer for a long time. And I think that's what's helped me the most, is just thinking like an endurance athlete. That's the mindset, is like even like mountain biking, there's times when you're aerobic, times when you're anaerobic. How do you figure out how to rest while keep moving? And then you're getting ready for more pain. And then is it pain or are you tired? It's like paying attention. And kind of, and figuring out you are going to have to make sacrifices. You are going to be the civilian equivalent of cold, wet, tired, and hungry. And you just got to get through it. And you got to know, like, hey, I'm going to keep getting the same lesson until I learn it. And here's the other thing: whatever feedback you got from your senior NCO or your commanding officer, whatever feedback you've gotten for 20 years, you're still going to get that same feedback. I mean, the stuff you're good at and the stuff you're not so good at isn't going to change. But what you've got to realize is the strengths that you have got you to this point. And it's not like you're going to go fix weaknesses. You've got to recognize when those strengths don't serve you very well. Like, I'll give you an example. You're a really energetic person. You're probably not very patient. Maybe you're not a very good listener. You get a lot of stuff done. You can multitask. You're results oriented. That's all good. But now you might need to dial that back a little bit now that you're in a different role. Be a little bit more patient, be a little better listener, collaborate more, ask other people's opinions. It doesn't mean you take away that energy. You're just going to have to dial it back. And you're going to have to be self-aware enough to know that. Because in some ways, you're probably going to get less feedback in the civilian world than you did in the military. Because they can't be by like, you better figure it out. You better, and a lot of people that get fired never see it coming. They haven't been reading the room. So anyway, that's a long answer to your question on mindset. Sorry about that, gents.
No, that was absolutely beautiful. And with that, we want to know, what is the title of your book? What is your book, and when is it coming out?
It's the title is Becoming a Self-Reliant Leader, and the subtitle is How Grit and Disciplined Duty Forge Indomitable Teams. And the foreword's by Stan McChrystal, and it's coming out by Ben Bella Books. It'll be distributed by Penguin Random House, and it will be out next summer. And we're really excited. My co-author is Jackie Jordan, who is also an Army veteran, and I'm really proud of the work we've done. And now we've got to do all that marketing stuff. The book's done, and but now all this other stuff comes, but it's fun. It's a fun process, and what I'm really hoping, I'd like to really, truly, truly believe that the book wasn't written with, any thought of pride or ego. It was written as a foundation, sort of a benchmark of, hey, here's where the crucibles are circa 2023. Whoever takes these on, maybe it's my son one day, they can go back and go, hey, here was the original intent, and we've built on it. Because I would like to see the Self-Reliant Leadership crucibles, continue in some way, shape, or form to help veterans, for years to come. So.
I love it, man. And how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. The easiest way is my website, selfreliantleadership.com. Selfreliantleadership.com. Just contact me through there. Tons of resources out there. And, my favorite podcasts are listed on there, that my favorite interviews that we've done, and all that's out there. And again, thanks for what you guys are doing. In addition to, having full-time gigs and doing other things, you've carved time out to help veterans and continue to serve in your way. And I'm sure it's helped you because, you ask really great questions, you're curious, and you probably feel like you're getting an MBA, every time you talk to somebody that's a little bit of ahead of you on the curve.
You are 100% correct. This started as a very selfless way to try to help veterans go through the transition that are going behind us, without us knowing, we are getting paid from their experience that every single person that we interview talks and teaches us, and it's absolutely fascinating. And Jan, I want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for everything that you've done, everything that you continue doing, and for allowing us to spend this time with you. Thank you so much.
Yep. Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah, brother. All right, Mil2Vet listeners, you guys heard Jan. He talked about the Crucible, talked about his leadership podcast, his book that's coming out here shortly. Please go out there, hit the shelves, show some support towards Jan and his organization. He really embodies what a servant leader is. So please take a listen to this, share it with others, and remember, it is your transition. So take charge of it. And it's not all rainbows and unicorns out there.
Mm-hmm.
Mil2Vet out.